I had always thought family gatherings were meant to be joyful, a celebration of love and unity. But that night everything changed. The wedding I'd been eagerly anticipating turned into the moment my heart shattered. I was standing there, holding my glass of wine, surrounded by laughter, but all I could hear were the words I overheard from Emily, my daughter-in-law. "She's just a burden. We only keep her around because of her money." My stomach dropped, my fingers tightening around the stem of my glass. The words echoed in my head as I stood frozen, unable to speak, unable to breathe. How could she say that? How could my own son's wife, someone I had welcomed into our family, speak of me like that? I wanted to turn around, confront her, demand an explanation, but I stayed still like a statue, every part of me trembling with rage and confusion. The wedding reception was in full swing, but for me it was as if the room had emptied, leaving just me and her words ringing in my ears. My thoughts raced, but the pain in my chest was so heavy I could barely think. I couldn't understand it. I had always tried to be a good mother-in-law, a caring presence in their lives, but this was the betrayal I never saw coming. I tried to convince myself it wasn't true, that maybe I misheard, or that she didn't mean it. But deep down I knew. The truth was there, clear as day. I had always suspected that Emily wasn't exactly fond of me, but hearing it spoken so openly, so coldly, was a punch to the gut. I didn't know what to do with this new reality. My thoughts kept going back to the years I had spent helping, supporting, loving, and yet all it took was a few words to rip it all apart. I felt my legs go weak. I had to step away, find some space to collect myself, but I didn't want to leave the reception. I didn't want to let her think she had driven me away. I had been patient for so long, putting up with her subtle jabs, her cold shoulder. But this was different. I wasn't going to let her win. I was going to play my part. I would let the night pass, let the wedding go on. But in my heart, I knew this was the beginning of something new. The family dynamic had shifted, and there was no going back. It was time for me to take control. The next few days would be difficult. I knew that. But what I didn't know yet was how Emily would react when she realized I had heard everything. I wasn't about to confront her just yet. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break down. No, this time I was going to play it smart. I was going to let her think I didn't know, that I was still the same old mother-in-law, the one she could walk all over. But the truth was, I was stronger than she thought. I wasn't going to let this go. Not anymore. Emily didn't know it yet, but the power had shifted. And from this point on, I was going to take back what was mine. The wedding had ended hours ago, but the sting of Emily's words still lingered. I found myself sitting alone in my room, the silence of the house amplifying the chaos of my thoughts. I had spent so many years trying to be a good mother-in-law, always there when needed, always putting the family first, but this cruelty was something I never expected. I had heard the rumors, of course, the whispers about Emily, how she seemed to prefer keeping her distance, how she would always find an excuse to avoid family gatherings or conversations with me. But I had never imagined she would openly speak of me like that. The more I replayed her words in my mind, the more they cut through me like a knife. "We only keep her around because of her money." That was what she said. Those words replayed in my mind like a broken record. It wasn't the first time I had felt excluded, but it was the first time I had heard the truth about what Emily thought of me. For a moment I wondered if she had said it out of anger, or if it was some kind of slip-up. But deep down I knew it wasn't. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't a mistake or a one-time incident. This was how she really felt. I spent hours in my room that night trying to convince myself that I could move on, that it was just a moment of frustration. But the more I tried to suppress it, the angrier I became. I had worked so hard for my family. I had sacrificed so much. And for what? To be treated like a burden? No, I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to let her win. I wasn't going to let my son, David, be swayed by her manipulation. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of determination. I wasn't going to confront Emily yet, but I would not let this go. I knew I had to be strategic, to think carefully about my next move. I couldn't afford to let my emotions dictate my actions. No, I needed to keep my composure. I went through the motions of my day, pretending nothing had happened, but inside I was planning. I knew I had to do something to make them realize the mistake they had made. I wasn't just going to roll over and accept this. Emily had underestimated me, and that would be her biggest mistake. I knew I had to approach this situation with caution. I wasn't going to throw a tantrum or cause a scene. I was going to handle this with grace but also with strength. Emily thought she could get away with treating me like I was invisible, like I was just a means to an end. But she was wrong. I had spent so many years taking care of everyone, always putting others before myself. Now it was time for me to focus on what I needed. I had built my life around them, around my family, but now I was going to rebuild my life for myself. It wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. I deserved to be treated with the same respect I had given them. I wasn't going to let this family, my son, and especially Emily, tear me down any longer. I started making plans. I knew that I had the power to change things, to make them see how much I was worth. But it wasn't going to be easy. Emily would fight back, I was sure of it. She wouldn't just let me walk away without a fight. But that was okay. I was ready for it. I had been patient for too long and now I was going to make my move. The first step was to get David alone. He had to understand that his wife was not the person he thought she was. I had to make him see the truth. But it wasn't going to be a confrontation, not yet. I wasn't going to push him away. I had to be subtle, plant the seeds of doubt in his mind. I wasn't going to drag him into a fight with Emily, not immediately. No, I would bide my time, wait for the right moment to reveal the truth. The next few days were quiet, almost too quiet. I noticed how Emily kept her distance, how she tried to avoid me at every turn. It was almost like she knew I was onto her, like she could feel the shift in the air. But she didn't know what I was planning. She had no idea what I was capable of. I had already started making phone calls, reaching out to old friends, people who knew the real Emily, who knew her true nature. I needed to gather information to have all the facts before I made my next move. But I also knew I couldn't rely on anyone else to fix this. This was my fight and I was going to win it. Emily would soon realize that I wasn't the weak old woman she thought I was. I wasn't going to be her doormat any longer. I was going to take control of my life again. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my son, stand in my way. The day of the confrontation was drawing near, and I could feel the tension building inside me. I knew I had to be careful, but I also knew I had to act fast. Emily was going to find out soon enough that she had made a mistake. And when that day came, she would regret underestimating me. I spent the next few days reflecting on my strategy. I had been careful, almost too careful. But the time for subtlety was nearing its end. Emily had no idea what was coming. I knew I had to act soon, but I also had to be patient. The right moment would come. It always did. I watched her closely, noticing how she continued to avoid me, how she kept to herself at family events pretending like nothing was wrong. But I could see through her. I knew what she was doing. She thought she could control the situation, keep me in the dark, but she was wrong. I wasn't the naive woman I used to be. Over the years I had learned to read people, to understand their motives, and right now I could see that Emily was scared. She could feel the tension in the air. She knew something was off. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't afraid. I wasn't backing down. It was time to confront her, but I wasn't going to do it recklessly. No, I was going to take my time, let her think she was in control. I was going to let her make the first move. The next family gathering came faster than I had expected. It was a small get-together, nothing too formal, but it was the perfect opportunity. Emily had just returned from a trip, and I could tell she was on edge. She kept fidgeting with her phone, avoiding eye contact with me. I could see her eyes darting around, always looking for an exit. It made me smile just a little. She had no idea what was about to happen. As the evening wore on, I could feel the tension building. David, my son, was as distant as ever, glued to his phone, and Emily seemed to be getting more uncomfortable by the second. The time had come. I stood up quietly and walked towards her. My heart was steady, my mind clear. This was it. Emily, I said softly, my voice calm. She looked up, startled, as if she hadn't expected me to speak. I could see the hesitation in her eyes, the uncertainty. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I wasn't going to give her a chance to lie or deflect. We need to talk, I continued, my voice firm but measured. She swallowed, her hand tightening around her glass. I could see the fear in her eyes now, the way her entire body seemed to stiffen. She tried to hide it, but I could tell she was nervous. She knew what was coming. What is it, Martha? she asked, her tone too sweet, too forced. I could hear the tension in her voice, and it only made me more certain that I was doing the right thing. I overheard what you said, I said, not even bothering to sugarcoat it. Her face went pale, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. What are you talking about? She asked, trying to play dumb. But I could see the panic in her eyes now. She knew exactly what I was referring to. Don't act like you don't know, I said, my voice growing a little colder. I heard you, Emily. I heard everything. She took a step back, her face flushing red. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She was speechless. You think I'm a burden, I said, my voice calm, but there was a steel edge to it. That I'm only good for my money, right? Is that what you really think of me? Her eyes darted around, and for a moment, I could see the wheels turning in her mind. She was trying to come up with a lie, something to save herself. But I wasn't going to let her. You don't have to say anything, I continued. I heard you. I know how you feel. I could see her jaw clench, the way her hands trembled at her sides. But she didn't say a word. She was too afraid. I wasn't done yet. You've made a mistake, Emily, I said, my voice steady. You've underestimated me. She opened her mouth to speak again, but I raised my hand, silencing her. I'm done being the quiet, invisible woman in this family. I've been patient, I've been kind, but no more. You will not treat me like this. She looked around as if she was hoping someone would come to her defense, but no one did. David was still glued to his phone, oblivious to what was happening. I could feel the power shift. This was my moment. Emily's face was a mix of shock and fury, but she knew she had no ground to stand on. She had been caught. I'm not going to let you ruin this family, I said, my voice firm. And I'm certainly not going to let you treat me like a cash cow, like I'm just some old woman who doesn't matter. I'm not going anywhere. There was a long pause. Emily opened and closed her mouth a few times, but no words came out. She was speechless, trapped in her own lies. And for the first time in years I felt a sense of power. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about getting even. It was about respect. I had earned that respect, and I was going to get it whether Emily liked it or not. The silence stretched on, and for a moment I thought Emily might say something, might try to salvage the situation. But she didn't. She just stood there, her face flushed with humiliation, and that was all the answer I needed. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her approval. I had already won. I could see the disbelief on Emily's face as she struggled to find the right words. The air between us felt thick, heavy with tension. I had said my piece, and now for the first time, I felt the weight of the truth settling in my bones. Emily didn't know how to react. She was caught off guard, not expecting me to confront her head-on like this. She had always assumed she could control the situation, that I would stay silent, continue to let her take advantage of me, but now the tables had turned. She stood there, frozen, her face pale, her lips parted as if she were about to speak, but the words just wouldn't come. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the cruel words she had spoken, the way she had undermined me, and that sympathy faded as quickly as it had come. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. I wasn't going to let anyone, especially not her, dictate how I lived the rest of my life. I could feel my son, David, in the background, still completely unaware of what was unfolding right in front of him. His eyes were glued to his phone. His attention focused on something trivial, completely oblivious to the chaos that was brewing. It stung seeing him so disconnected. He had always been my little boy, the one I had raised with so much love and care, but now it felt like he was slipping away from me. I had always tried to be the good mother, the one who put the family first, but it seemed like no one was willing to do the same for me. I could feel a deep ache in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I was stronger than that. I had to be. Emily's silence lingered for what felt like an eternity, and then finally she spoke, her voice shaky. I didn't mean it like that, Martha, she said, her words coming out almost pleading. But I wasn't buying it. I had heard her, and the words she had spoken were still fresh in my mind. You don't get to apologize now, I said firmly, my voice steady. The damage is done. I could see the frustration building on her face. She was used to getting what she wanted, manipulating those around her with her charm and lies. But I wasn't going to let her do that to me anymore. You've made your position clear, I continued, my voice unwavering. And I've made mine. I'm not your punching bag, Emily. I'm not just some old woman you can use whenever it's convenient for you. Emily shifted uncomfortably, but she didn't move. She was trapped, caught between trying to defend herself and realizing that there was no way out. Martha, please, she started again, but I didn't want to hear it. I don't need your excuses, I said, cutting her off. I don't need your sympathy either. What I need is respect. Something I've given to this family my entire life. Something that you, and maybe even David, have taken for granted. I could feel the sting of my words as they left my lips, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to hold back anymore. I wasn't going to let her off the hook just because she was trying to play the victim. She had done enough damage, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. Emily took a step back, her eyes filled with something between anger and regret. I could tell she was starting to realize that she had underestimated me, that she hadn't taken me seriously when I had kept quiet for so long. But now it was too late for apologies. She had already crossed the line. I'm not going anywhere, I said, my voice low but firm. This is my home. I built this family, and I'm not going to let you tear it apart. Emily looked away, unable to meet my gaze. She knew I was right. She had been trying to push me out, trying to manipulate my son into believing that I was the problem, but now the truth was out in the open. She couldn't hide behind her lies anymore. If you want me to leave, you're going to have to try harder than that. I added, my words sharp. But I won't make it easy for you. Not this time. I turned away, not giving her the satisfaction of seeing me break down. I wasn't going to let her see how much she had hurt me. I wasn't going to let her see the tears that threatened to spill. I had worked too hard to build this life, this family, and I wasn't going to let her destroy it. As I walked away, I could feel her eyes on me, but I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had made my stand, and now there was no turning back. I wasn't the same woman I had been when I walked into that wedding. I wasn't going to let Emily or anyone else define me anymore. The power had shifted, and this time I was the one in control. I woke up the next morning feeling a strange sense of calm. The confrontation with Emily still lingered in my mind, but instead of the anger and frustration I expected, there was only a quiet determination. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way I had been the night before. The anger had been replaced with something stronger, something more purposeful. I had spoken my truth, and now I had to figure out what to do with it. The house was quiet as I moved through my morning routine, but the silence didn't feel oppressive like it used to. Felt different. I knew that things were changing, that the dynamic within the family had shifted. But it wasn't just Emily who needed to understand that. It was David, my son, too. He hadn't said much the night before, hadn't even looked up from his phone while I confronted his wife. That hurt, more than anything Emily had said. I had spent years taking care of him, making sure he had everything he needed, even when I didn't. I had sacrificed so much, but now he couldn't even look me in the eye. Stung more than I cared to admit. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me, but I wasn't going to let it break me. I couldn't. As I moved through the house, I found myself thinking about the life I had built. The house, the family, the sacrifices I had made. It had all been for them. But in the end, it felt like I had been the one left behind. I didn't want to feel sorry for myself. That wasn't why I was reflecting on all of this. I was thinking about how things had changed, how the family dynamics had shifted, and how I needed to adapt to this new reality. I had spent so many years putting others first, always putting the family's needs ahead of my own. But now, for the first time, I realized I had to start putting myself first. I wasn't going to let Emily's cruelty define me. I wasn't going to let David's indifference define me. I was going to define myself. The phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the caller ID and saw it was David. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello, I said, my voice steady but cautious. Hey Mom, David said, his tone more distant than usual. I've been thinking about last night. I'm sorry about what happened with Emily. She didn't mean what she said. I couldn't help but scoff inwardly at his words. He always tried to protect her, always tried to make excuses for her behavior. It was like he couldn't see what was right in front of him. David, I don't need you to apologize for her. I said, my voice firm. I don't need you to protect her. I need you to see the truth. Emily has been manipulating you and you've let her. It's time for you to open your eyes. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear the hesitation in his voice when he finally spoke again. I don't know what you want me to say, Mom, he replied. I love you, but Emily is my wife. I can't just turn my back on her. I'm not asking you to turn your back on her, David, I said, my voice softening, but there was a firmness to it that I couldn't hide. I'm asking you to see the truth, to see that she's not the person you think she is. I'm asking you to stop letting her control everything. I heard him sigh on the other end of the line. I don't know, Mom, he said. I don't know what to do with all of this. You don't have to do anything with it yet, I said, feeling a calmness settle over me. But you do need to think about it. You need to think about the kind of person you want to be, and the kind of family you want to have. I can't keep living in this toxic environment, David. I won't. There was another pause before David spoke again, his voice quieter this time. I don't want to lose you, Mom, he said. But I don't know how to fix this. I could hear the conflict in his voice, the struggle between his loyalty to his wife and his love for me. It hurt, but I knew he had to make this decision on his own. You don't have to fix it, David, I said gently. But you do need to start seeing things for what they are. I could hear him sigh again, and I knew he wasn't ready to fully accept what I was saying. But it didn't matter. I had said what I needed to say, and now it was up to him. The conversation ended and I set the phone down, feeling a mix of emotions. I wasn't sure where things would go from here, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let this family tear me apart. I wasn't going to let anyone control my life anymore. I had given so much of myself for so long, but now it was time to take back control. It was time for me to live for me. As I sat there, the weight of everything finally started to lift. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't invisible. I was strong, and I was going to show the world, starting with my own family, just how strong I was. The phone call with David had been a wake-up call for both of us. It had been a painful conversation, but I knew it was necessary. He had to see the truth just like I had. And maybe, just maybe, it would be the first step toward rebuilding what had been broken. But if not, I was ready to face whatever came next. I had already started to rebuild my life piece by piece, and I wasn't going to stop now. I woke up the next morning with a strange sense of calm, yet a subtle weight still pressed on my chest. It wasn't the kind of weight that would break me. No, it was the kind that signified change, a new chapter unfolding. Emily's words still echoed in my mind, but I no longer felt consumed by them. I had taken a stand, and I wasn't going to let anything or anyone take that power away from me. The silence in the house felt louder now, somehow more profound. I moved through my daily routine with an unexpected sense of purpose. I knew that things were shifting, that the family dynamic was on the verge of something new, but I couldn't predict where it would lead. What I did know was that I had to keep moving forward, regardless of what lay ahead. I made my breakfast, a quiet ritual that had always grounded me, but this time it felt different. I could feel the weight of my own decisions, the choices I had made for my own well-being. It wasn't selfishness. It was self-respect. I knew Emily wasn't going to take kindly to the confrontation. She had always seen me as weak, someone she could manipulate, control. But the reality was different now. She had underestimated me, and I wasn't going to let her forget that. As the morning stretched on, I found myself thinking about David, my son, the one person who should have been there for me, the one person who should have seen what was happening. But instead, he had remained blind to it all. He had brushed off the situation with Emily, as if it were nothing. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. I had spent so many years giving him everything I had, putting his needs above my own, yet now it felt as though I were invisible to him. I could feel the anger rising again, but this time it was different. It wasn't the uncontrolled fury I had felt before. It was quiet, determined. I wasn't angry at David for what he had done. I was angry at myself for allowing it to go on for so long. I had let him believe that he didn't need to protect me, that I didn't deserve to be protected. But that was over. Now, I wasn't going to beg for his attention or his affection anymore. I wasn't going to be the one always trying to fix everything. If he wanted to see the truth, he would have to look for it himself. The phone rang again, this time breaking through my thoughts. I glanced at the caller ID and saw David's name. For a moment I hesitated. The last time we had spoken, it hadn't gone well. He was still caught between his loyalty to Emily and his love for me, and I wasn't sure how long that would last. But I answered anyway. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Hey, Mom." David's voice came through, hesitant, as if he wasn't sure what to say. "I've been thinking about last night, about everything. I know I should have been more supportive. I should have been there for you." His words, though they sounded sincere, didn't bring me the comfort I had hoped for. They were too little, too late. "David, you can't just sweep this under the rug," I said, my tone firm but not unkind. "You need to open your eyes and see what's really going on. Emily isn't the person you think she is. And if you keep ignoring it, you're going to lose more than just me." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear him processing what I had said, trying to find the right words. "I know," he finally admitted. "But I don't know what to do with all of this. I don't know how to fix it." His vulnerability, though a relief to hear, made me sad. I had hoped for so long that David would come around, that he would see the truth for what it was. But he wasn't there yet, and that realization stung. "You don't need to fix anything, David," I said, my voice softer now. "You just need to see the truth. You need to see me, and you need to see Emily for what she is." Another pause, and then I heard him sigh. "I don't know if I can," he said. "But I'll try. I promise I'll try." It wasn't the resolution I had hoped for, but it was a start. At least he was willing to consider it. I hung up the phone with a sense of finality, but also with a deep feeling of emptiness. There was still so much work to be done, so much healing that needed to happen. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right path. I wasn't going to let Emily or anyone else control my life anymore. I wasn't going to be the one always making excuses, always accepting the scraps of affection and respect that were thrown my way. I deserved better than that. I deserved to be seen, to be heard. As the days passed, I focused on myself more than I had in years. I took walks in the park, enjoyed the small moments of peace that had once been overshadowed by the demands of family life. Felt strange at first, but it was also liberating. I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval. I wasn't waiting for anyone to tell me I was doing a good job. I was doing it for myself. I still had moments of doubt, moments where I wondered if I was making the right decision. But those moments were fleeting. The more I focused on my own happiness, the more I realized that I had been giving up so much of myself for others. It was time to stop. It was time to start living for me. The next family gathering came, and I prepared myself. I knew that things hadn't been resolved between me and David, but I was okay with that. I wasn't going to chase him anymore. If he wanted to see the truth, he would. I wasn't going to force it. When I arrived, I could see the tension in the air. David and Emily weren't speaking much, and I could feel the shift in the atmosphere. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid to be myself, to stand up for what I believed in, even if it meant standing alone. I had taken back my power, and nothing, not even Emily, could take that from me. I woke up the next morning with a strange sense of calm, but the weight of what had happened the night before lingered in the back of my mind. The confrontation with Emily had been a turning point, but I knew that the real work had just begun. It was one thing to speak my truth, but it was another to live it. I had already taken the first step by standing up for myself, but now I had to navigate the aftermath. I wasn't sure what to expect from David, but I knew I couldn't wait for him to come to me. I had to keep moving forward. The house felt quieter now, like the tension had settled into every corner. It was as though the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. I knew Emily was still upset, but what surprised me was how much I had begun to feel sorry for her. She had made her choices, and now she had to deal with the consequences. But that didn't mean I could forgive her, not yet. I spent the next few days doing what I had promised myself I would do, focus on me. I took long walks in the morning, something I hadn't done in years. I spent time in my garden, tending to the flowers that had always been my escape. It felt good, really good, to have a moment of peace, to not feel like I was constantly on edge, waiting for the next emotional bomb to drop. I had always been the one to put others first, but now I was learning to put myself first. I wasn't used to it. For so long I had been the caretaker, the one everyone could rely on. But now it was my turn. The phone rang, and I knew it was David before I even looked at the caller ID. I hesitated for a moment. The last conversation we had felt unfinished, like we were both standing on the edge of something, but unsure how to move forward. I answered the phone. "Hello," I said, my voice steady but guarded. "Mom, we need to talk," David said, his tone serious. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about what happened between you and Emily." I could feel my heart rate pick up. I wasn't sure what he was going to say, but I knew it was time. Time to face whatever was coming next. "I'm listening," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I don't know where to start," he said, the weight of his words making the air between us feel heavier. "I guess I've been blind to a lot of things. To how Emily has treated you, to how I've treated you." He paused for a moment, and I could hear him breathing deeply on the other end. "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have seen it sooner. I should have been there for you." His words were what I had been waiting for, but they didn't bring the relief I thought they would. They weren't enough to undo the hurt. "David, I appreciate your apology," I said, my voice softening. "But you have to understand something. I'm not asking you to choose between me and Emily. I'm asking you to see the truth. I'm asking you to see me, to really see me, for who I am and what I've done for this family." I could feel the tears threatening to rise, but I held them back. This wasn't the time to cry. This was the time to make sure he understood. "I've spent my whole life giving everything to this family, David," I continued, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. "But somewhere along the way I lost myself. And I'm not going to keep doing that. I'm not going to keep being the person who gets overlooked, the person who is treated like she doesn't matter." There was another long pause. "I don't want to lose you, Mom," David said, his voice breaking slightly. "I don't know how to fix all of this, but I want to try. I want to be there for you like I should have been." I could hear the sincerity in his voice, and it made my heart ache. But I also knew that words weren't enough. Actions would speak louder. "We'll see, David," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. "But you need to understand that it's not just about saying the right things. It's about showing up. It's about being there when it matters. I need to know that I'm not just someone you keep around because you have to. I need to know that I matter to you, not because of what I can do for you, but because I'm your mother." "I get it, Mom," he said, his voice low. "I really do. And I'm sorry. I'll show you. I promise." "Good," I said, feeling the weight of the conversation lift just a little. "But remember this, David. I've spent so long giving to everyone else, trying to make things right for them. But I'm done doing that. Now I'm doing what's right for me." "I understand," he said quietly. "I won't let you down again." I hung up the phone feeling a mixture of relief and uncertainty. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. But it was a step in the right direction. I wasn't sure where things would go from here, but I was done waiting for things to happen on their own. I was going to take control of my own life, and whatever happened with David and Emily, I would be okay. I wasn't going to let them define me. I had spent too many years doing that already. I spent the following week in a quiet sort of haze, moving through the motions of my days, but with a part of me always on edge. David had called and we had talked, but I couldn't shake the feeling that nothing was truly resolved. Yes, he had apologized, yes, he had promised to do better, but promises are just words until they are backed up by actions. I didn't need him to tell me what I wanted to hear anymore. I needed him to show me that he meant it. Emily was still a constant presence, like a shadow, lingering just out of sight but always there, her silence speaking volumes. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. Her true nature had been laid bare, and while I wasn't ready to forgive her, I wasn't going to let her steal my peace either. The house felt different, quieter, but in a way it felt more like my own. There was no pretending anymore. I wasn't going to let her or anyone dictate how I lived my life. I was learning that boundaries were necessary even with the people we love. But what really surprised me during that week was how much I had started to change. For years, I had always placed everyone else's needs before my own. I had always been the one to make things right, to fix problems, to keep the peace. But now I found myself saying no for the first time in a long time. I found myself standing up for what I needed, and that was a kind of strength I had never known before. I wasn't sure where things stood with David. I wasn't sure if we would ever get back to the way we were. But what I did know was that I didn't need his approval to feel complete. I didn't need him to make me feel valued. I had spent so long looking to others for validation, but I realized that it was time to start validating myself. I had spent my entire life caring for everyone else, but now it was my turn. The next family gathering came and I wasn't sure how to prepare. I knew it would be awkward and part of me dreaded it, but I also knew I had to face it. This wasn't just about Emily or David. This was about me taking control of my own story. The day arrived and as I walked into the room, I could feel the tension in the air. David wasn't speaking to Emily much, and Emily's eyes barely met mine. It was obvious that neither of them knew how to move forward. And honestly, neither did I. I sat down at the table and for a moment it felt like time had frozen. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions, of confrontations and realizations, but now in this moment, I felt an odd sense of calm. The storm had passed. The pieces were still scattered, but I wasn't going to let that define me. David looked at me across the table, his face filled with something I couldn't quite read. He didn't speak right away and I wasn't going to rush him. This wasn't about me demanding answers from him. This was about him taking responsibility for his part in everything that had happened. And finally, after a long pause, he spoke. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know I've let you down. I've been blind to everything that's been going on, but I want you to know I'm here for you. I don't want to lose you." I looked at him and for a moment it felt like I was looking at the son I had raised, the one I had always been proud of. But the truth was I couldn't go back to the way things were. Too much had happened. "I know you're sorry, David," I said, my voice steady but soft. "But I need more than just words. I need you to show me that you mean it. I need you to be there for me. Not just when it's convenient, but when it really matters." There was another pause, and I could see the sincerity in his eyes. He didn't argue. He didn't try to defend himself. He just nodded and that was enough for me. "I understand, Mom," he said quietly. "I will." I didn't know if he could change, if he could become the son I needed him to be. But I wasn't going to wait for him to prove it. I wasn't going to keep holding my breath, hoping for something that might never come. I had waited long enough. The rest of the evening passed in a strange quiet tension. We all tried to act normal, but there was an unspoken understanding between us that things had changed. They couldn't go back to the way they were. And maybe that was a good thing. When the night ended, I walked out of the room feeling a strange mix of emotions. I wasn't sure where I stood with David, but I was finally at peace with myself. I had made my stand and no matter what happened from here on out I was going to be okay. I wasn't going to let Emily or David or anyone else define my worth. I had spent so many years waiting for others to recognize my value. But now I knew that I didn't need anyone's approval to feel worthy. I didn't need anyone's permission to live my life on my own terms. And for the first time in a long time I felt free. The weight that had been hanging over me for so long had finally lifted. I didn't know what the future would hold, but I knew one thing. I was ready to face it, no matter what. I woke up that morning feeling a sense of finality that I hadn't experienced before. The past weeks had been filled with confrontation, realizations, and moments of self-reflection. Yet, in the midst of all the chaos, I had found a kind of peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that comes from everything being perfect, but the kind that comes from knowing you are finally standing in your own truth. I had spent so many years trying to fit into a role that others had defined for me, constantly adjusting to their expectations, to their needs. But now I was done doing that. I wasn't going to change for anyone anymore. I had spent my entire life nurturing others, making sure everyone else was happy, but somewhere along the way, I had forgotten to nurture myself. I had forgotten that I too deserved to be seen, to be heard. And now that I had found my voice, I wasn't going to let it go. As I got ready for the day, I couldn't help but think about David and the conversation we had the other night. It had been a turning point, no doubt, but I also knew that it was just the beginning. He had promised to try to show up for me, but words were easy. It was actions that would matter. I couldn't keep waiting for him to change. I couldn't keep waiting for anyone to change. I had to take control of my own life. The phone rang and I saw it was David calling again. I had almost expected it, but still I hesitated. I wasn't sure what to expect from this conversation, but I knew it was time to face it. I answered the phone. "Hey, Mom," David said, his voice sounding uncertain. I've been thinking about what you said the other night, and I've been looking at things differently. I know I've messed up, and I want to make things right. I didn't know what to say at first. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But I also knew that words had no power if they weren't followed by action. David, I'm glad you're seeing things differently, I said, my voice steady. But you have to understand that it's not enough to just say the right things. You have to show me that you mean it. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear him sigh. I know, Mom. I know. I've been blind and I don't want to lose you. I could feel his sincerity in his words, but I also felt a sense of caution. This wasn't just about him apologizing. It was about him taking responsibility for what had happened. David, I'm not going to keep waiting for you to fix this, I said softly. You need to see that this isn't just about me and Emily. This is about me taking back control of my life. I'm not going to sit around anymore hoping things will change. I'm going to make them change. The words came out before I had even fully processed them, but once I said them, I knew they were true. I had spent so long waiting for others to validate my worth, but now I realized that I didn't need that anymore. I want to help, Mom, David said, his voice more determined now. I want to make things right. I just don't know where to start. Start by being honest with yourself, I replied. Start by really seeing what's been happening, not just what you want to see. You can't fix anything if you're not willing to face the truth. There was a long silence, and I could feel the weight of his thoughts on the other end of the line. Finally, he spoke again. You're right. I don't know how I didn't see it before. I've been so caught up in everything, so wrapped up in my own life that I didn't even realize how much I was hurting you. I could hear the guilt in his voice, but I wasn't sure if it was enough. David, I know you're sorry, I said, my voice softening. But you can't keep apologizing for the same things over and over. You need to show me that you're going to do better. I will, Mom, he said. I promise. I'm going to do better. I just need you to give me a chance. I'm not giving you a chance, David, I said, my voice firm once again. I'm giving myself the chance to finally live for me. To not keep waiting for you or anyone else to make me feel worthy. I'm done waiting. And I want you to be a part of that. But you have to meet me halfway. The conversation ended with a promise, but I wasn't sure what to make of it. I didn't expect instant change. I didn't expect everything to be perfect. But I did expect him to start showing up, to start taking responsibility for his actions. And if he didn't, I would be okay. I was already on my way to becoming okay. The truth was, I had already started building a new life. A life where I didn't have to justify my worth to anyone. A life where I could be myself. Without fear of judgment or rejection. It wasn't going to be easy and it wasn't going to happen overnight. But I was ready. Ready to take on whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength to handle it. I had learned to stand up for myself, to finally say no when it mattered, and to stop letting others define who I was. I wasn't waiting for anyone to tell me I was enough. I knew it now. I was enough. And that was the only validation I needed.